So here's a question. If you want a really good telly, which one do you buy? The American Pro 2 or the American Vintage 2? We're going to dive into both of these guitars today and maybe help you make a decision. I know I've made one. So this is not going to be, is this guitar worth it? Is it better than a Squire? Blah, blah, blah. Let's get all that out of the way right now. These guitars are phenomenally good. This video will be for someone who is looking to get an American-made Telecaster, who just wants a really good Telecaster that is kind of everything I think you would want it to be. But there are, even though they look similar, there are some pretty major differences here that are going to kind of make you go down the modern road or the vintage road, and we're going to discuss those differences. First of all, let's get quality of the instruments out of the way. That's always a big thing. People are always saying, you know, Fender quality is going downhill, Gibson quality is going down. Let me tell you right off the bat, both of these guitars are phenomenally good. I've had 3 American Fenders in here in the last couple weeks, and they have all been perfect. Except for one little anomaly with this one that we'll get to, but I think it was an anomaly, and I don't think it's something that you need to worry about with worrying whether the guitar is good or not. The frets were perfect, the finish was great, the fret ends were perfect. Everything about these guitars were phenomenally good. What you should do when you get a good Telecaster is take it to your guy and have him set it up the way you want it set up. So Fenders typically come 2mm string height, and they usually come about 30 thousandths on the nut height, which, like I said, both of those measurements can be a little high for some people, but that's just how they do it so that it's sort of in the middle of the road for folks. So if you want it lower, you know, down to 15 or 20 thousandths on your nut height, and if you want it down, you know, 1.5 millimeters or so on your action or whatever, just make those adjustments. It's no big deal. It's not a quality problem. It's just how the guitars come from the factory. That's just kind of their general setup. That's how you see them come. All right, general overview on both guitars. Basically, this is the American Pro 2 is kind of your modern Telecaster, but it's got all the good parts of the vintage Tele as well. So let's talk about it. We've got basically our VMod Pro pickups, I think that's what these things are called. Alnico 5. They are flat. They are not staggered. We'll get to why in a moment. We've got a more modern 3-saddle bridge here. So this is kind of interesting. It's got cutaways on the side of the bridge so that you can, just have more clearance, have more comfort when playing. It's also got these 3 brass saddles, which is a nice vintage touch. However, they're a modern version that are bullet so that they're not as sharp. And the screw heights in them are adjusted so that you don't get that palm digging situation that sometimes with vintage Teles that you can get. So a little refinement there is kind of nice. It's also got the 3-way switch with a volume and a tone, and then we've got a push button here. Now, a little note about this button. The thing I don't like about push buttons is that they sit a little high, so you can see it doesn't match the other button, the other knob. Okay, so that is finicky, but picky, but that's the way it is. And I just don't like push buttons because they're a little spongy and cheap feeling. I'm sure it will be fine. It will hold up totally fine for the amount that you're probably going to use it. Now let's talk about the body shape. This is called the Modern Body Shape. Now, there's a couple of interesting things about it. You don't notice this until you actually hold it up to a vintage guitar, but this little shape right in here is just a little bit different. And of course, we have the modern heel on here. There's a couple other modern things. As you'll notice, the ferrules are not flush into the body like they are on a vintage guitar. We'll show you that in a minute. So it's a little bit different. It's alder. This is also a polyurethane finish as opposed to a nitrocellulose finish. Now the neck has narrow, tall frets. They're great. The frets are great. They feel great. One of the major differences between these two guitars is this has a slab top rosewood fretboard with plastic dots and 22 frets. So we've got the little lip that sticks over the pickguard here. Of course, we've also got the modern style truss rod on this thing, and we also have the satin finish, urethane finish on the neck. This feels amazing. Literally feels amazing. And you notice that we've got the skunk stripe here because it is a slab top. We've also got modern tuners, just die-cast, normal die-cast, non-locking tuners. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now let's talk about the one little faux pas that we had with this guitar. When you probably saw when we did a how-to video about adjusting nuts that I cracked the bone nut on this guitar. There was some weird voids in, I don't like bone nuts because I don't think they're consistent enough. And synthetic materials in 2023, you're not going to worry about, for most 99% of people who don't make stuff up in their own heads, will be okay with using a synthetic nut. So this is a Tusk XL nut that we put in here to replace it. It sounds great. It feels great. It was easy to machine. It's perfectly adjusted. Everything is fine with it. But there was just that little, the bone had this weird void in it. It was just not good. And it cracked. So I just went ahead and replaced it. Will this happen with your guitar? Probably not. It was probably just an anomaly in one piece of bone. Don't stress about it. Don't not go buy one of these guitars because that one thing happened to me. I think too many people on the internet will say, I saw it in a video, so that must mean that's the way they all are. I do not believe that's the case. I think it was just one little anomaly, so don't stress about it too much. So now, right off the bat, we've got a couple of things here. Obviously, it's alder body, maple neck, rosewood fretboard, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. The body shape is the proper 1963 vintage shape, and you may not, again, you may not see this until you hold two of them up right next to each other. This little curve right in here to the neck is just a little bit different. Actually, the bridge pickup route is just a little bit different. String ferrules are flush mounted. We also have the normal conventional square neck heel here, and so that is your conventional vintage style telly. Let's talk about the neck. The neck is your vintage 63 sort of C shape. All of the guitar is nitrocellulose, so the neck finish and the body is also, it's all nitrocellulose. At least the modern version of the way Fender does it now. And then we've got clay dots, and we've got a laminated fretboard here, and we've got no skunk stripe. This is also a 21 fret fretboard with the vintage style truss rod in the heel of the neck. This is very 63 spec sort of situation. We've got safety post Klusen single line tuners, which are my favorite because you don't poke your fingers when you change strings, and they're very easy to use. This does have a bone nut. I have not changed the nut in this guitar because it is fine. Regular CTS pots. The one difference here is of course we don't have any push-pull or anything fancy like that. It's just a volume and a tone and a three-way switch. We've got the vintage style top hat switch, which is my personal favorite, which I really like. One of the things about a 63 spec guitar also is there is no screw adjustments for the neck pickup, so you have to take the pickguard off to adjust the height of the pickup, which is also interesting. These are some 63 spec vintagey kind of pickups. So the thing about these is these have a stagger to them, and these are actually different than the 64, 65, 66 stuff. I'm just now noticing that. This is a 7 1/4 fretboard radius. We didn't mention it on the other guitar. This is actually a 9 1/2 fretboard radius, so it's a little bit flatter. Now here's the thing. Don't stress about the fretboard radius on both of these guitars. If you hold up neck fretboard radius gauges next to each other and look at the differences on the ends where it's at the edge of the neck, you will see that it is absolutely so minute, the difference. Don't stress about it. There are people that will say, I can only play a certain fretboard radius. Don't stress about it. Just learn to play the guitar. You will definitely enjoy it. The one thing I also should mention is that the vintage nut width on this guitar is 1.650. This one is 1.685. So this one is a little bit wider. This has vintage tall frets. It has clay dots. It has clay dots on the side. This is a 1963 spec vintage guitar. It smells good. It's pretty awesome. I guess we should also talk about cases. So the 63 spec guitar comes with an American Vintage 2 case, which is your old style wooden case. You see it here. It's got the orange inside. It's very vintagey looking. It smells great. This guitar also comes with the ashtray that goes over the bridge, right here. One interesting thing about that is it fits kind of loose. The old guitars, if you had a real old guitar, it was so hard to get on and off. But I think they probably opened it up a little bit because they know nobody's actually going to use it. So it's in the bag, it's in the case. If you want to put it on there for photos, for Instagram, to show it off to your friends, that's cool too. But chances are you're actually not going to use it, and you're going to chuck it in the case just like this one is. Now the case for the American Pro 2 is more of a flight case. You can see that the inside is fitted really tightly to the guitar. It does work for a Strat and for a Tele, but it fits very, very well. It's got properly good latches. It's a plastic case. It's heavier, but it does protect the guitar more for gigging and that sort of thing. So it's a really, really nice case. Who would buy what guitar and why? Since I'm holding the American Pro 2, we'll talk about this first. First of all, this is a urethane finished guitar, so it's still totally resonant, bro. Like, don't worry about that. If you want the nitrocellulose finish, you have to go with that guitar. This guitar is $16.99, which in my opinion, I think is an excellent value for all of the features that it comes with. And what's interesting about it is it's taken all the really good things about a Telecaster, a vintage Telecaster, and it's updated them to make it for the modern player who might not necessarily care about the vintage spec, but just wants a really, really good guitar. The urethane matte finish on the back of the neck is a lot smoother and easier for a lot of people to play. The 9.5-inch fretboard radius is a touch flatter, so it will be easier to do setups on for those of you who may not have as much experience with that. Allegedly, these saddles will be easier to intonate. However, I was able to get these saddles on the vintage guitar completely perfect with a Peterson strobe tuner. They were 100% perfectly intonated, and I know some people will not believe me when I say that, but it is perfect. The guitar is perfect. The bridge here is kind of cool. It's got this little cutaway thing. Personally, I don't like it, but that's okay. You've got this series thing. This is just a great guitar. A little bit easier to play probably for some people, for a little bit wider like this. And it's $400 cheaper than the other guitar. If you are a person who wants a really good Telecaster without some of the quote-unquote drawbacks of a vintage instrument, but still has all of the really good parts with some modern appointments that make it more convenient to play and more convenient to care for. I think this is your jam, and I think it's less money. This, to me, for majority of people, is going to be the guitar to own. If you are a person who really appreciates that pre-CBS spec, who really, really likes that type of feel of guitar, the nitrocellulose finish, the smell of it, the fact that it gets kind of sticky when you play it and it's going to wear in, and oh, I just hit my bracelet on it. Oh, don't freak out. This is my personal guitar. This is not borrowed from anybody or anything. I bought this. So this is mine. So spoiler alert, this is the guitar that I bought for myself, given the choice between the two. This is actually a Patreon members who allowed me to borrow it for this video. So thank you for that. And thank you to all the Patreon viewers who support Patreon and allow us to be able to do this kind of stuff. Thank you, Chris, for allowing me to use this for some videos before I ship it to you. I wanted a properly good vintage spec guitar. The gives and takes are the setup can be a little more finicky with a 7 1/4 inch radius fretboard. The pickups are that staggered stuff. The vintage style saddles, some people may not like because they've got the little screws in there. They may be frustrated with trying to intonate them. One thing also I should mention, this guitar came with 10s and that guitar came with 9s, which is sort of weird. Some people may not like the safety posts. I love them. I think they're easier to change strings and I think they are more reliable. This guitar to me is the perfect guitar. The downside to it is care and setup for somebody with less experience, as well as less durability when it comes to weather and traveling and that sort of stuff because of the nitrocellulose finish, as well as the case. So if you're going to be gigging a lot, if you're going to be taking this thing out on the road a lot, if you're going to be traveling with it a lot, the American Pro 2 might be a better bet for you because the case is going to be tougher. It's going to hold the guitar better, as well as just the guitar itself is constructed in such a way that you'll have to worry about it less, if that makes sense. So, but if you're a finicky vintage junkie like I am, then you're going to want one of these. This thing is fantastic. Now, it is $2,100. I think it is worth every penny. It's one of the best Teles I've ever played. I love this guitar. Well, hopefully that helps give you an idea which guitar you would like to have. Do me a favor and get in the comments. Let me know. Would you want the American Vintage 2 or would you want the American Pro 2? Which one of these, what kind of player are you? The more modern style or the more vintage style? Which way do you lean on that sort of situation? Also, there will be links to both of these in the video, as well as in the description of the video, as well as some of the other gear we used and you heard throughout some of the sound samples. So do me a favor and shop around using those links. It does help out the channel. Even if you don't buy anything, just do some clicking around. That tells Sweetwater and some of the other companies down there in the description that you are interested in what we're doing here, and then they work with us in future videos. So just clicking around helps as well. I also want to thank again my Patreon supporters for making these videos possible, because that's how we get a hold of some of this stuff. That's how we buy some of this stuff, is from the Patreon supporters. So patreon.com/DylanTalksTone if you want to support that, as well as the little subscribe button down here. Thank you so much for everybody who watches this stuff. Do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button, because we've got some really cool projects coming up with this. We're going to make it into like a Brent Mason sort of situation, and I think you're going to dig that as well. So do that stuff for me. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.